Okay, welcome to the next installment here. We're here with Brian, who graduated from Miami of Ohio back in 2019. It's been 6 years. He's had some awesome experience since he graduated, which we're going to dive into. Brian, welcome to the program. Tell us a little bit how you're doing. Give us a little bit about your background. Kind of where'd you grow up? Why'd you pick Miami of Ohio? And then what did you do after school?
Sure, Ben. Thanks. So I grew up in the Chicago suburbs out in Lake Zurich. I chose Miami of Ohio mainly for the business school. I knew I wanted to go into finance. When looking at schools kind of in the area, since I didn't want to go too far, Miami, I think, was just really the best business school I ended up getting into. And after visiting the campus and seeing the business school, that was kind of the moment I fell in love with the place. So I think that was a pretty easy decision based on the options I had available. After Miami, I went to work in private credit at Pigeon Private Capital for 2 years in Chicago and then 2.5 years in London and Paris. And then after that, I went to travel for about a year around the world solo. And now I'm back in the States and looking to get back into private credit. So that's where we are today.
Wow, what a fascinating journey just in the last 6 years. Not only did you get into an interesting industry in private credit, but you did time in Chicago, London, Paris, and have traveled the world for a year. So that's pretty amazing. Well, I kind of want to digress a little bit. Let's talk about private credit a little bit. How did you end up with a role in private credit? Was that your target initially? Did that evolve over time? And what do you think was the key thing that helped you land the role?
Yeah, so it was not really on my radar when I was recruiting out of undergrad. I think, like a lot of other people kind of in my, social circle, I was looking to go into investment banking. And I think, as a lot of people know, it requires a lot of networking, conversations with other professionals. And through my networking, I got connected with some people who worked at Pigeon Private Capital who kind of talked me through the work that the analysts there do. And I think the most compelling thing for me that led to my decision to go into private credit directly instead of choosing the investment banking path was that I got to go straight to the buy side and think like an investor from the beginning. Like, I was thinking about, why am I going to investment banking in the first place? And the ultimate goal was to be a good investor. And if I could just kind of skip the sell side process and go straight to thinking like an investor and deploying capital and managing a portfolio of investments, I thought that was the best way for me to go. And so that's what ultimately led me to going there. Sorry, what was the next question?
Yeah, no. So you kind of talked through a little bit about, I guess, how you pivoted your strategy into private credit.
Yeah.
I guess tell us a little bit more about how was it landing that private credit role versus what you envisioned and what you experienced through the investment banking process? Were they pretty comparable? Were there any big differences that you saw?
I'd say it was largely comparable on like the technical side, understanding the financial statements and understanding what might make you a good investment. But I think what they were looking for that might be different was more of a kind of investor mindset from the get-go, and also understanding what goes into a good credit investment versus maybe what goes into a good growth investment, which is, I think, often what you're pitching from an M&A role.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And so looking back, what advice would you give to a student who's exploring some of these different career paths? What type of person would be a better fit for private credit?
So I think a lot of private credit analysis is kind of value investment analysis. And that's like thinking at a very basic level, does this company have a reason to exist? Does this company generate, strong and consistent cash flows? And less on the side of, do we think this company is going to grow at a fantastic rate over the next X amount of years? And so I think someone more interested in that kind of investor or value investment analysis might be better suited for a private credit kind of role. I think it additionally a credit instrument, has a limited upside anyways, and you're more focused on protecting yourself against the downside. So maybe someone who's a bit more skeptical and defensive in their analysis and their investment style might be better suited for credit as well.
Um, Yeah, this is great stuff, Brian. So let's say more about that. As you get into things I've heard, I wasn't personally on the debt side. I was on the M&A side, but some of the things I've heard is that the skill sets required can be a little bit more technical, right? Getting more into the details of predicting free cash flow, and that's a really critical aspect of the role. Whereas, say, sell side M&A, you will build some basic valuation models, but nobody's really relying on that to like make a decision. That's just more informational, or it might be part of your pitch, or there's some different reasons for it. So tell us a little bit more about that. Like what did you find? What was most challenging, and what are some of those skills that you relied on more every single day, uh, along those lines?
I think it wasn't as much necessarily like digging into valuation. I think that matters, of course, when you're thinking about how much to leverage the asset and what's like an appropriate capital structure when you're going into the investment. I think what mattered was how does the business generate cash flow, and what might cause that business to not generate so much cash flow in the future. So you're thinking about not just the operational, like kind of fixed costs and variable costs within the organization, but you're also thinking about kind of competitive positioning and demand for the product going forward. And I wouldn't say it's always like dependent on your forecasts either. Like I said, credit's a bit more of a defensive kind of mindset when you're going into the investment. And so really, as long as the company as long as the company keeps performing the way it's performing today, you're going to get out fine. If it can be refinanced in the future, it doesn't necessarily need to grow as much. So I think the forecasting is more, what does this company and what does this company's cash flows look like in a downturn? Instead of how much do we think this company is actually going to grow going forward.
Okay, so like more stress test and sort of fundamentals focused.
Right. And that stress test, it doesn't have to be necessarily what you think is going to happen, but it's the downside case. Like, if things go wrong, what does this look like, and what levers do we have to pull to protect our value?
Right, but you've got to analyze and assess all of the different downside scenarios and downside protection.
Correct. You're always thinking about risks and potential mitigants to those risks that ultimately make you comfortable making that investment.
Yep. I say that is definitely different than sell side M&A. Sell side M&A is up and to the right.
Right.
Here we go. It's like, how are we going to quadruple the company in 3 years? Like, okay. But interesting. These are some of the differences, and I think that it's clear that private credit is going to resonate with some students more than others. And I appreciate your comments on this, because it's not as common of a path, especially early on. In people's career exploration process, which is one of the beauties of networking, right? You had mentioned it yourself. Like, when you went on your networking journey, you talked to enough people who were in these different areas, and that's how you found private credit. Without the networking process, you never would have found it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think initially I wasn't even interested in it, to be honest, because
after your first conversation?
Yeah, I was so focused on M&A, and I PGIM's a part of Prudential at the time. It was called Prudential Capital Group, and I was like, oh, this is an insurance company. It doesn't sound as sexy as bulge bracket investment banking. But ultimately, investing up and down the capital structure in all these different kinds of companies. It was a more generalist role, and then also in credit, you get to see a lot more deals, and so you get to have a lot more kind of reps than you might get on a sell side M&A role or even a private equity role. So that was also attractive.
Great point. If you want to see more deals, then private credit could be a great option. How many deals might you review and work on in a year, in an average year?
Closing, I mean, depends on the market environment, of course, but in terms of closing deals, probably closed maybe 6 to 10 to 12 a year sometimes if it was very
Oh,
busy.
wow.
Yeah, so a lot, and if you think about it, a lot of the volume, it's not just M&A driven. It's refinancings, it's recaps. So there's a lot of
Yep.
different circumstances that might require you know a private credit investor to come in and provide capital where an M&A transaction might not be happening. So
Absolutely. And just for people's reference, compare that to investment banking, middle market, you might be, closing two deals in a year is going to be pretty good. And if you're three or four, then you're, working like crazy. Compare that to 12, right? Or then compare that to bulge bracket where you're, sometimes you're lucky if you get one. So, that's certainly, it's not about saying one is better than the other, but these are different, and you want to know what these differences are in terms of the day-to-day work life, uh, the in order to make the best decision. So I want to go back here to when you were first exploring this career path. Typically, so you said you weren't interested in it. You're like, sorry, first off, you said I had no idea it existed,
yeah,
and then you talked to someone and you found out, okay, this exists. I don't know, and you kind of weren't really, it didn't resonate right away. You said you weren't interested right away, but then at some point something happened. Right. At some point, something happened. There's a tipping point where you were like, wait, actually, this might be my number one. Like, what was that moment? Was it a particular conversation? Was there one person that really, ended up being more impactful for you with respect to you ultimately choosing private credit?
I think it was throughout my conversations with the various people that worked there, but I think probably the biggest thing was when they explained to me the type of work that an analyst does on a private credit team, it sounded similar to a lot of the analysis that I would have been doing as an investment banking analyst, including analyzing the company and the industry, modeling financials, and thinking about what's the true value of this asset. And I think that point was probably the biggest point. What is the true value of this asset, instead of maybe trying to sell someone else or convince someone else of a value of an asset. And so I liked
Yeah.
having that, the other side of it, thinking, what's the true value? Because when you do make an investment, it's on the books, and you have to actually make sure it performs in a buy side role, versus in an M&A role, you complete the deal and then you move on to the next deal, and you don't have as much skin in the game. So I think that was particularly attractive to me.
Yeah, you've kind of called out one of the key dichotomies between buy side and sell side, which is interesting to explore, right? The buy side is clearly you're buying the asset and you're stuck with it. You got to monitor performance, but your real underlying goal, like you said, is to find the true value, right?
Right.
The intrinsic value of the investment, and then you make your decision. Whereas on the sell side, there is an incentive to know that. Like, you can't not have an understanding of it, but it's what I experienced was it was more about the managing director would typically have more of a gut feel for what it was based on, a couple years worth of EBITDA and revenue and knowing about the industry, and they would have their finger in the air, and that would drive a lot of things. And we would build models to back that up, or potentially call out differences that from what we saw. But at the end of the day, no one was really relying on our valuation. It was the it was the buyers that had to build their own valuation that really mattered. Um, so no, this is good stuff. Well, so I appreciate you going through that. So thinking back to a lot of our listeners are undergraduate students who are working to break into high finance, broadly defined, investment banking, investment management, um, you know, debt, equity, capital markets, and buy side and sell side. What would you say as you now have the benefit of hindsight, several years out, plus some global experience, which is awesome. Luke, what would you say, like looking back, like what were some of the most impactful tools, tips, resources, conversations that you have that stand out to you as were really impactful for you personally and helping you succeed?
Yeah. So I'd say when I first got to Miami University as a finance major, within my first semester there, I really didn't know what I wanted to go into. Like, I didn't know about investment banking really. And I saw this email for a financial modeling course, which was Adventus, and I ended up, I was a finance major, so I was like, financial modeling, that's related to my major. Maybe this could be useful for me.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I didn't know what it was, but it sounds relevant. So I went and took the course, and it came easy to me. And I was talking to the student instructor that was working the course, and we're talking through the model, and he's like, if this seems to make a lot of sense for you, maybe you should consider things like investment banking, where people use these skills on a daily basis. And that's kind of what initially got me interested in the world of high finance and investment banking, and what kind of ultimately drove me to pursuing a career in that field. So that conversation was definitely critical, and I think beyond that, it was a lot of the networking with other students. I think a big one was joining like our school's investment banking club and just talking to other people that are trying to break into the same fields. Like, you get a lot of tips and tricks on how to do just that. You get, summaries of kind of the interviews that other people are going through, and what to prepare for, and how to network, and what to think about when you're thinking about this career path. And I think that was really valuable. So just surrounding yourself with the types of people that are doing similar things was really, really helpful.
Yeah. There's no substitute with getting yourself around like-minded people and taking advantage of those who came before you. Some of that institutional knowledge that you get from the clubs, so important and critical. And it's clear that Miami's got a great it's like a small but mighty, right, group
Yeah.
that's in that investment banking area is what I would say. So yeah, I would like to ask you a little bit more about your Adventist experience. I mean, like so it's clear that it's interesting. You took the course. You sounds like you signed up for one of the in-person boot camps
Right.
back, because this was pre-COVID, right? So a lot more in-person stuff was happening, and you met the student trainer, and they got you sort of cued into this investment banking world. But as you progress through the training, like, how do you think the training and the skill building that resulted in a certification, like, how do you think that helped you move, in terms of going forward with ultimately securing your role, or being successful on the desk? Like, what are the specific ways that training helped you?
I think it really helps you get like a full, complete understanding of how the three statement operating model works, how an LBO works, how a DCF works, especially I would just build the model over and over and over again until it was kind of second nature, but also think through what I was doing while I was doing it. And I think that stands out in interviews specifically because you're not just, regurgitating answers that you studied, or doing the math in your head because you know how to do the math for that specific problem. Like, you actually understand what's going on, and they can kind of throw anything at you, and because you understand this model completely, you can show that knowledge in an interview. So that was really helpful. I think once I hit the desk, I had an advantage because Pigeon Private Capital, we would hire analysts straight out of undergrad, and a lot of the other people that were in my analyst class didn't necessarily have experience building financial models before. Like, you can practice the technicals all you want, but if you haven't, practiced those skills in Excel and practice building models, you're not going to be as fast when you hit the desk. So that really helped me kind of start ahead and be able to start working on other skills earlier than other people that might have needed to kind of build those modeling skills, get quick at modeling and formatting and those kind of things.
Well, those first few weeks and months on the desk are so critical, right? In terms of like hitting the ground, building a reputation with your peers and your more senior folks. So yeah, like when did you first realize, like, hey, actually, I might be faster and more accurate on Excel than some of my peers? What happened to you to help you realize that?
I think a lot of the training that kind of otherwise would have been on like the modeling and financial like accounting stuff was skipped, and I went straight into some of the more complicated, trainings that might have only been given to someone who's maybe like a year in. So that was
Oh,
really
wow.
helpful, and I was able to advance actually quite quickly. Like I think within 6 months, I was already on a deal team with it where it was just me and my team leader, and I was the only kind of analyst underwriting all the deals. And so I was like trusted much faster with the models, and I was given more challenging tasks more quickly because I was already kind of a step ahead.
Wow. So okay, so you were making progress from the modeling perspective, and one of the MDs or one of the VPs sort of saw you, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I was my like direct team leader at the time, like a VP, who saw that I was already quick with modeling and understanding the accounting, and she gave me tasks that involved some terms negotiations, which isn't something that like a first month or first 4 months analyst usually even thinks about. Like we're still trying to figure out what we're doing on the desk, but it was good to get a bit of a step ahead and more of a challenge than I think other people that were in my analysts were getting at the time.
Awesome. Oh, it's such a great story. I mean, it shows you the difference between knowing the academic answer that you might memorize from the 400 questions book and then building physical understanding of what the model is through muscle memory, drilling, and repetition. And your story just illustrates how it has real impact when you get on the desk. I mean, this is not imaginary possible impact. I'm right. This is literally you've got VPs and directors coming up to you and be like, whoa, you can do that. And you've only been here for a couple months. You're on my team now. And,
Yeah.
and you're off and running. So that's awesome to hear. And clearly that sort of led to other opportunities for you because then next thing you know, you're in Chicago. How did you get the opportunity to go to London and Paris?
Yeah, so that came up, I think, about a little over a year after I first joined. I was just at a brunch with one of the more senior MDs, and she just asked. She said, how are you enjoying your time at PGIM? And I was enjoying it. I told her all about it, and then she followed up with, how did you feel about moving to another office like London? And I thought about it for literally 2 seconds, and I said, yeah, send me. That was it. And then, I mean, it took a while because it was kind of still during COVID. So it was a bit of trying to figure out when was the best time to send me to have a good experience and actually be in the
Right.
office. So it was, 9 months later or so that I actually ended up getting shipped out to London. But that was a great
Yeah.
experience. I spent 2 years in the London office working on similar deals, but in a different market. So it was a great learning experience.
Well, I'll tell you, they don't give those opportunities to average performers, right? You've got to be above average to be able to earn something like that. So congrats on that opportunity. So yeah, tell us about your experience of what did you like and what did you enjoy most about London?
The city was amazing. I mean, coming from Chicago, it's a big city. London is a really big city, and there's a lot of different neighborhoods with all different kinds of cultures almost to the different neighborhoods, and I just enjoyed exploring the place, and also just being close to continental Europe. It was easy to go on kind of weekend trips and travel around Europe on my own. And then the work
Yep.
environment, I think something that I hadn't fully appreciated while I was living in Chicago because I didn't have like the New York experience was just being in such like a financial hub. It actually
Like
did
global hub.
yeah,
Yeah.
global financial hub. It like actually really did impact the experience. Like I could, I was walking down the street to the London Stock Exchange to watch earnings presentations for some of our portfolio companies, and you can't do that
Oh
type of thing
wow.
in Chicago. So and you're meeting with directly with the bankers and lawyers and private equity investors that are like right down the street. And I think that was a different experience from Chicago, where I mean you're close to clients and you're close to some bankers and investors, but I think it's just much higher concentration in London, and I feel like that would be kind of a similar experience to what you would get in New York. So I like that about it.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't, a global financial powerhouse is something different. Like Chicago's a regional, big time regional player. But yeah, there's no replacement for the New York, the London, like the Singapore,
Yeah.
some of those like just clearly global hubs. That's really fan. And it was cool that you didn't go. I mean, New York is great, but it's awesome too to like, get some international experience. Clearly that was like, was that your first time traveling internationally or had you done some other travel growing up?
A bit of travel, and I did like a short study abroad program in London, so I kind of knew I already liked the city, so that made the decision easier.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Fantastic. What school were you studying at in London?
It was like a J term program, so we actually had like professors from Miami come with us to London. So it was really taking
Oh,
similar courses just in a different location, which is
very
a
different
good
environment.
experience. Yeah, yeah,
It's a good professor gig.
yeah,
Awesome. Well, so you did this for a few years. I know you had some time in Paris, and then you made this choice to say, I'm gonna kind of, take a step back, take a step forward, maybe take a step left, right? You took a big step, and you said, I'm gonna go travel the world for a year. How did you make that decision, and how did you approach getting into that year?
yeah. So I'm a very curious person naturally, and then I think living in London and getting to travel around Europe a bit, often by myself, was something that ignited a bit more curiosity. I think I had just moved back from London, so it was kind of a natural transition point, and it was something that I had wanted to do for a long time. But looking far into the future, in this kind of career path, you're not going to get that many opportunities to take weeks or months off, kind of ever. And I felt like I'd gained a good amount of experience with 5 years, but I wasn't so senior that I'd be really out of touch if I took a step back for a moment. And it just felt like the right opportunity, the right time to take that opportunity. And like it was a window that was closing. So I thought if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it now, and I'm gonna do the whole year. So yeah, it wasn't a decision that was an easy one to make because I really liked the work. It wasn't, there was like no sense of like burnout. I wasn't like disinterested with credit. I was actually really enjoying it. So it was a kind of a completely separate personal choice to go do this.
Wow. Well, that's just yeah. Got to give you kudos. That's impressive. Most people have that idea and they watch some videos about doing that, and then it just never happens for them. So
Yeah.
congrats on carpe diem, right? Seize the day. You did it. So yeah, where did you? I mean, where did you go? Like how many countries did you visit, and which country was like which country would you move back to?
Move back to, oh yeah. I think I visited 28 countries in the 12 months. 4 months was spent in Southeast Asia, and 4 months between Central America and like Colombia and Peru, and then
Oh,
6 weeks
wow.
Southern Africa, 3 weeks camping around New Zealand, 3 weeks in Turkey, and then I hopped around Europe for a bit in the summer. So it was kind of like a global experience.
Truly global.
Yeah, yeah. And there were some places where I spent, a week or less, and some places where I spent over a month. So it was really nice to have the flexibility to show up to a place and just see whether I liked it and see if I liked, traveling the area, and have the flexibility to stay if I wanted or go move on to something else if I really wasn't vibing with the place. So I think a place that I would move back to. I went to Singapore. I was only there for like maybe 5 days, but it's a city it's very clean. It seems well run, and I mean it's another big financial hub. So when I was walking around the streets of Singapore, even though it was pouring rain, I still really liked the city, and I could see myself living there in the future.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I mean, that kind of leads us to where you're at now, and now you're back from your trip. You're feeling great, and you're starting to look at the job market again. So, how are you thinking about it? Are you looking at Singapore?
Being back has been really nice. I mean, I left in June of 2021, so I guess it's been a really long time since I've lived in the States for kind of a long period of time.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying being back in the States. So I think ideally looking at opportunities here in the US. In the future, I think I'd still definitely be open to international assignments. It was a great experience, and it's something I wouldn't mind doing again. But I think for now, I'm staying in the States. Mostly looking at kind of where the good opportunities are. It's more of a decision based on the job opportunity than I think the location, as long as it's in the US. But I'm seeing a lot of good opportunities for credit in New York. I mean, there's just so many private credit funds that have popped up in
Mm.
since I moved out to London, even in the past like 4 years. So there's just so many people that are growing and expanding and hiring, and new strategies that are cropping up. So it's an exciting time to be looking for work in credit.
So, tell us about your job search strategy. I mean, how are you approaching it? How are you getting in front of companies?
Yeah, so it's a mix of networking with people that I know from either like my analyst class or other people that worked at PGIM that have since moved on to other credit funds, people that I knew from undergrad, and reaching out to recruiters that I've might have talked to in the past or that have reached out over the years, and setting up connections that way. So kind of tackling it all angles to see if I can score myself an interview. And it's something that I anticipated when I took a step away. It's at times a bit of an uphill battle explaining taking a year off, because it's not something that you see every day. And I knew I'd be competing against people that are right off the desk. But I think a lot of firms and a lot of managers are still pretty open-minded and accepting and understanding of my decision. And I think at the end of the day, those are the people that I probably want to work for anyway. So
Exactly. First off, if they're not, I would say screw them.
yeah.
Because they're already telling you that it's not a good fit. I mean, honestly. So always, and this is advice I give to every, it's so important. You want to tell someone what they want to hear, and you're always trying to navigate that and impress people. But you can't do that at the expense of not being authentic. And I think it's such a key part of your story and what you did. If they're smart, they're going to be like, whoa, this guy just took a freaking year sabbatical. Hell yeah, I want to bring him on. He's totally like gassed up, ready to go, ready to get back at the desk and hit it hard. And or I could hire someone who's been burning themselves out for 3 years and is just looking to change gears somehow. That almost seems higher risk to me than you. But
yeah, at times I think it can. There's a lot of things that I learned while traveling as well. Like surprisingly relevant skills that I've gained that are like just making decisions with very limited information, kind of under high pressure, getting along with all different types of people. Like these are all things that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis in finance. So
like actual people from different backgrounds, really different backgrounds.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
people in the US are like, oh, I know people from different backgrounds. Or like they know someone from the suburbs, they know someone from the city, they know someone from Texas. Therefore they have a big, network. Like, nope.
Exactly.
But you met people like, I love your trip because you really did it global. A lot of people will say global and they just went to like Europe and Southeast Asia, and maybe stopped off in Japan and came home. Like that's it. Whereas you got to see. I mean, yeah. Were there any continents you missed? I think you'd mentioned you did South America, Central America, Europe, Asia, and Australia.
Yeah,
so Australia, New Zealand.
New Zealand. Yeah. So I hit everything.
Oceania.
Yeah. I didn't go to Antarctica, but
that was not. Yeah, no airports. No civilian airports anyway in Antarctica yet. Cool, man. Well, I think because as we kind of wrap up the conversation here, I think just your journey is awesome, and I know it's going to be a great story for undergrads to hear. It's tough to be in the trenches of networking, not really knowing where you're going to go, and you got all this work in front of you, and you're just not sure how it's going to work out. And stories like yours, I'm sure, are going to be really inspiring and motivating to a lot of people. So on that note, what message would you give to the folks who are currently in school? Maybe a freshman rising to be a sophomore, or a sophomore going into that junior year internship, or excuse me, sophomore year internship, or like what advice would you give to them about breaking into high finance and investment banking, private credit? Like, what's the one piece of advice that you would give to someone in that situation based on your experience?
I think that if you're working hard and showing people that you're working hard, like people will take notice of that, and a lot of people want to hire people that work hard. Like it's I think it's fairly simple. Like if you're persistent and you're networking and you're doing all the right things, I think things can fall into place. And so I think just keep working hard. Use all the resources that you can, and you'll get there. I think another thing is, like, similar to my story, like, don't get caught up in thinking you have to go down one certain path because you thought that was the right path, or everyone around you is choosing that path. Sometimes things can work out really well just by selecting something that might be something different, and just keep like an open mind to all the opportunities out there, because ultimately one path isn't for everyone, even if it looks nice. And you might
Yeah.
end up being a lot happier doing something else. So I'd say stay
Well,
flexible.
it's easy to fall into an echo chamber, right?
Yeah.
You're in this group where everyone's doing something, and so I would agree with that 100%. Like if every one of your friends is going in one direction and doing something specific, you should actually probably double check that that's the right direction for you, because
Yeah.
their choice is to say nothing about you, right? Now maybe it's because you've selected them as friends and you guys have a lot in common, then maybe it's a good fit, but at least something to pressure test. Um, so the advice you just gave was all about, you said, there's no substitute for hard work is basically what I heard you say. And
Yeah.
you've got to, at a fundamental level, if you want to succeed, you've got to outwork the people to your left and to your right is how I'm interpreting what you're saying.
Yeah.
So say more about that. Is it about, like, say more about that? What is working hard in terms of a high quality working hard? Like, what does that look like compared to someone who's maybe working hard but spinning their wheels?
When I let's see, when I like first hit the desk, I think one of the things that really helped me stand out was looking at those around me that not only worked the hardest, but were looked at by others as the best at what they did, and trying to figure out what made them so good. And so it wasn't just like working hard, but these people were, recognizing their weaknesses and correcting them and looking at analysis in different ways, and actually had like a genuine interest in finding the best outcome for the deal team. So it was like a mixture of finding creative ways to solve problems, constantly developing your own skills and recognizing your weaknesses and improving, and as well as working hard and letting everyone else know that, hey, I am working hard and I'm dedicated to this goal.
Yeah.
What?
Well, that's a really great point. Like when you're new to an industry, new to a profession, you're just getting started. By definition, you don't know your own weaknesses, and you have to
Yeah.
listen to other people and let them tell you, "Hey, this is what you need to get better at." And none of it's a bad thing. It's a developmental process that everybody has to go through. I think it's like, think of yourself in the minor leagues. If you're a sports fan, pick, minor league hockey or baseball or college football or something. Like when you're in the minor leagues, your only purpose is to develop. It doesn't mean that you're not good. I think a lot of people, they mix that up. They think, oh, if I'm not good, then I won't get negative feedback or constructive feedback. But it's really the opposite. It's, if I want to be great, I have to be aggressive about bringing in constructive feedback, because
Yeah.
otherwise I won't know.
Yeah, and that was another important thing I was constantly asking, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong? Because when you're so busy and your team leaders are so busy, it's really easy to submit something and just hear thanks, and then that's it. And so
Yeah.
like periodically asking, what can I actually improve on? And I need some constructive feedback here was also really helpful.
Yep, that's a great one. Another one I would recommend is, you could say, what have I done wrong? You could also ask, what could I do differently? What could I do differently? And it kind of gives, because a lot of times what I've found, or you tell me if it matches your experience, but if you ask someone that, they don't want to say anything negative. So, oh well, no, everything's good. But if you say differently, then it's like, oh well, okay, well, here I would have preferred A, B, C, D
Right.
differently, but it's not a bad thing. What you turned in was fine, but here's some things you could have done differently, and it sort of gives the boss or the reviewer more permission, if you will, to explore some different topics. And it's like a softer way to ask it, as opposed to like, where did I fail?
Yeah. Right.
That's it's a little too much. Whoa, slow down there, buddy. You didn't fail. Let's but cool. All right, Brian. Well, look, Dave, this was a really fun conversation. Again, fantastic story. So different, and yet so, like, I feel like there's so many people who will be really interested in doing something similar, or exploring something similar, or learning from some of the things that you've accomplished. So, really appreciate your time. Wishing you the best of luck with the current job search.
Thanks, Mike.
And that's it as we wrap up.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.